What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shuggy from Shook Earth Media, and today we are back with The Walking Dead Dead City Episode 3. I'm enjoying this show. I'm having a great time with it. As a Walking Dead fan, I gotta say, so far this is the best spin-off of the original series that we've had, and we're getting into the meat of the story now, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of this season. I think the episodes we got left should be pretty action-packed and interesting. This episode slows the pace down a little bit, and it gives us a lot of backstory. It's a backstory heavy episode. It has some flashbacks. We learn a little bit more about the main villain, the Croat. We learn a little bit more about the guy Pearly, who was the bounty hunter guy looking for Negan. And there's a bit of conflict at the end, some action scenes in the middle, but mostly a dialogue heavy episode. So I did enjoy the episode. It did feel like a little bit of a pullback from the previous episode, which I really loved. It was a really great Negan scene. However, I am happy to report that there is some great Negan stuff in this episode as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And I'm sure that there's some parts that didn't really work for me so much, and we're going to break that down. But overall, still pretty good episode. Although I want to see the story pick up the pace again in the next episode. So that's my overall thoughts on this episode. I enjoyed it. And with that, we're just going to break into the breakdown. So we start off with a flashback scene, and this one is setting up the character Ginny. We get to see a little bit more of Negan and Ginny together. Of course, there's a lot of backstory in this episode. So this is one of the main parts of the backstory that we're getting. We're learning a little bit more about their relationship, and we're setting up this character. You know, my opinion thus far on this character Ginny is I'm just a little unsure about where we're going with this and why we need this character. Because, you know, we've kind of had the Negan redemption arc before, so we have another character that Negan's supposed to care about to show his good side, per se, and that's kind of what she does in this episode. These flashback scenes show Negan doing something nice for somebody. So that kind of counteracts some of the other things he does in the episode that are exciting to see. But yeah, so I think overall my thoughts on it haven't really changed. I did enjoy these flashback scenes, but I'm still like, you know, there's got to be payoff for this character. There's got to be a purpose behind it. Otherwise, you know, my thoughts haven't really changed on it. But overall, I did enjoy these little scenes here. She's looking for a dinosaur toy that she had, and we saw that before. I kind of forgot about that. I don't even know if I really picked up on it. She had a dinosaur toy in the first episode, and it features heavily in this one. So we got a zombie here that it sneaks up on her. Somehow it's like a skewered zombie, so there's a backstory there. I guess this guy attacked them the previous night and then ended up dead in the woods. They do a lot of stealth zombies in The Walking Dead, and it kind of drives me nuts because you would hear the zombies from a mile away, but in this case, he only starts growling when she comes around the corner. Now, we also have lurkers. We have roamers and lurkers. Roamers roam around, and you hear them coming. Lurkers kind of are in a dormant state, and they activate when you come near, so I guess maybe it's a lurker. But he's kind of fresh, right? He's just from the last night. But that's just me overthinking it. But Negan's like trying to get through to her. You know, you got to call out when you need help. And just dealing with the frustration of the fact that she won't talk, you know, and working through that. So we're delving a little bit into that. I did like those scenes, but I'm still not sold on it. And then she caught up to New York. I don't know if she's got a map or how she knew how to get here. But then she gets in a cooler thing and paddles her way over. It looks kind of goofy, I will admit, but I guess I buy into it. But part of that makes me think these guys in the city that are getting attacked by the Croats people, why don't they find a cooler and paddle their way out or get some type of raft or something? I don't know. So that's just something I'm thinking about watching that. It looks a little goofy to me, but I'll give it a pass on this one. So the next scene, we are now with this new group with Maggie and Negan, and there's a little bit of a hunting scene. So we have a deer, and they are trying to distract it by whacking together some like antlers. And I like the scene. You know, it's just a survival scene. I'm down with it. Showing the new crew that we're with working together, and then they're skinning it and getting the meats ready to eat in this little grocery store bodega thing. So I kind of like I like seeing a little bit of survival stuff in there, And here in this next scene, we're getting a little bit of backstory on the beginning of New York City, surviving there. It's kind of backstory we already got from Pearlie in the first episode, so it felt a little redundant, but it seems natural that they would be discussing that the government, blew up the bridges and the tunnels and trapped everybody in here. And I like that conversation overall. Pretty interesting. And they are kind of also talking about how the Croats people, not a lot of people have escaped from there. Only one person that they know escaped from there. It turns out it's this guy Tomasi that we've been introduced to in the last episode. But Maggie has to go out and collect herself because she's thinking about her son. It's overall a pretty good scene. It sets the scene pretty well. There's also this guy Luther, that this guy over here, the guy who's skinning the deer, he is instantly just set up at odds with Maggie and Negan. He doesn't trust them. Reasonable, and I think it makes sense from his perspective. So honestly, I feel like this guy is right, and we'll get more back to him at the end of the episode. But he's putting on some type of cream on a cut, some type of disinfectant, I'm guessing. And I like that aspect, another survival thing. And Negan asks for some, and he says no, and that's the first hint that this guy is not going to be on our side. He's going to be kind of an antagonist. But the only thing that takes me out of it with that is this guy has got this animal's blood on him, and I don't know if he'd want to rub that in his wound, you know what I'm saying? But, I guess I'm nitpicking there, but that's just that's what I was thinking of. This is how my brain works, as I apparently seek out things to nitpick, as you guys know. So the next thing is we're looking at the stadium. There's a bunch of zombies outside of it, and that's where we need to go. That's the next bit of the storyline here. And here we got another conversation. Basically, we're trying to convince this group to take out the Croats people. And Negan kind of drops a little history lesson on them about his own history, but he doesn't reveal that it's his own history at first. Maggie does that later in the episode, but he's just saying, there was a tyrant, and then this happened 12 years ago, and people came together and took the hammer back, and they took him out. So basically telling his own story. And I like this scene. It's setting up what's happening in the next episode. Now, when I see this scene, I'm like, okay, cool, we're about to get some cool action. But that's not really what happens. We kind of just get, more setup stuff the rest of the episode. So pacing-wise, it slows down. We had that first episode that was really good and got everybody interested. Episode 2 was even more action-packed towards the end. Some really exciting parts for fans of Negan. And this episode, I think, slows that down. I don't know. It's still a good episode. I still like it, but I do question if it was the right time to slow the pace down. But, that's just me in the back of my mind. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But now we got Pearlie. He was kidnapped at the end of last episode in those traps. And we got we got a lot of answers in this episode. So we got zombies inside these chemical baths, and they're getting broken down. And it turns out that the Croat was a scientist, and he worked in alternative fuel sources, and he is turning the dead into fuel. And that's one thing I was thinking of. We saw these vehicles coming into the stadium. I'm like, where are they getting the fuel? These are just things, world building things I'm thinking of in the back of my head. I'm like, either they got a connection to the CRM or some bigger group that has drilling going on. But no, they actually have their own energy operation. And I think it's an interesting concept. I'd be curious to know from more scientifically minded people how practical and realistic this really is. But I'm down. We're using the dead bodies to make fuel. Sure, I'm down with it. It's something, I'm cool with that. It's some world building stuff. It's cool looking, and I'm intrigued by it. Just a little nitpick in this scene. We got they go through a horde of zombies on the outside of the stadium. They drive in, and there's no gate to stop the zombies from coming in. At least not that I noticed. And I would think that a big truck going by, that would be a noise that would draw the zombies to them. So that's just a little nitpick, is why weren't there zombies coming into this tunnel here? I don't know. Maybe there's a garage door or something. I don't know. This is a question I have. So Pearlie is on the inside now, and he is being kept prisoner, like how the Croat has been known to interrogate anybody to try to get whatever information that might be useful to him out of them. So I'm intrigued by that. We got a man on the inside. Last episode, I'm assuming, was supposed to make us feel bad for him after the first episode, kind of making him an antagonist. So now we're supposed to kind of root for him in a way. And I'm curious to see where we go with that character. So here we're back with the crew, and we're planning an attack. We seemingly have them on our side, that we're going to finally try to take out the Croat. We're going to use the tunnels. And Maggie reveals a little bit about Negan's past, that he knew the Croat, and that Negan has a little bit of insight into how he works. And she tells the story about Negan shooting his ear off. So Negan was resistant to that. So in the previous episode, we had a lot of scenes where Maggie was trying to take the lead. She failed. Negan took over. And in this episode, we have a reversal of that. So we had Maggie doing something that Negan wasn't on board with. So it's interesting to see that dynamic kind of shift, and I'm curious to track that as we go. I find it intriguing. We didn't have any scenes in this episode kind of addressing the end of the last one, with Negan doing the really violent thing to put on a show for their enemies. I'm surprised we didn't address that in any way. It kind of feels like maybe this guy who's so antagonistic about Negan would want to bring that up, the brutality of what he did, that it's not somebody you'd want to trust. And even when Maggie and Negan have scenes later in the episode, I kind of thought that was going to come up at some point. Especially because I really liked, I didn't mention in my last review, but when Negan looked at Maggie, his look to me said that he felt like her judgment of him was right in a way. Like, he just did this thing that was really brutal, and then he looks at her and he sees that maybe he hasn't changed. You know, he still is the guy that murdered Glenn. So I'm surprised we didn't address that, but maybe it'll come later. It kind of just felt like something missing from the episode in general. But anyways, we get this scene here with our Pearly character held captive, and the Croat comes in, and there's a security guard here, and here's a scene where we get some backstory on the Croat, that he was a former scientist, like I said, and I find this intriguing. I like this scene in general, but then he cuts into the meat that's here, and it turns out that there's a maggot in there, and then he goes a little nuts and takes out the guard guy who brought him the food. And, you know, I like having insects and stuff and dealing with that. That's a cool thing. But he feeds the guy the key to the Pearly's handcuffs, and then he throws him off the balcony. So I guess my only issue with this part is I like how it pays off later. But at the same time, it's a little bit repetitive with The Walking Dead, where, okay, we need to make sure that you know that this guy's evil, so we're going to have him murder one of his own people. I mean, we did that with Pope in the final season of The Walking Dead, the original series, and it's a little repetitive. We always do that. It kind of feels like a reflex. So, I don't know. I do like how this pays off, though, so maybe it's worth it at the end of the day. But I don't know, just because he brought food that was rotten, I don't know. I don't know. Would you really want to follow somebody who would kill you just for the slightest mistake, you know? I don't know. It just seems like, it doesn't seem like realistic that people would want to follow that guy. But again, like, Negan's getting into, he gives people what they need, and that's what Negan used to do. So there's a little bit of the parallels there. And I guess you would, if you're desperate and you need food, just be willing to put up with a seemingly dangerous guy. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I thought it was a little much. So then we cut to the scene with Maggie looking at this box she has of important items. So she has her pictures of her father and her family, and then she's got the pocket watch that was her father's as well, and then she's got a hand-drawn picture of Glenn. And I don't remember somebody drawing Glenn before. I don't know if that's something we saw, but I'm just like, who drew that? I don't know. I don't think Maggie has that skill, does she? I don't know. Let me know if you guys remember that drawing of Glenn before. But I did like that she's looking through these items, and then Negan comes in. He's like, oh, I can actually be a good listener. It's a funny line, but I guess the one thing, like, I do like this scene and the emotions in there. it just doesn't feel like Maggie would have this scene with Negan right now. It doesn't feel like they've earned that. Her kind of revealing her true thoughts on it. Like, I was like, she should be having this conversation with literally anybody else. Tomasi, the new guy we just learned, like, I don't know. I feel like she would rather tell a stranger this stuff than tell Negan this stuff. It feels a little off to me, personally. I feel like it wasn't earned. So, and there's one thing I gotta say. I've said it in videos before, but not in the reviews yet. I'm just saying this now. There's probably weirdo shippers or whatever they're called. People want Maggie and Negan to hook up. If they do that in this show, I'm done with The Walking Dead forever. I've committed to reviewing the spinoffs, but at that point, these hack writers, I'm out. I'm out at that point, you know. So I hope that's not what they're building towards. But yeah, just I do like the emotions of the scene and Maggie talking about. She reveals the backstory of how young Herschel got kidnapped, and just how we saw in the flashback last week that they were kind of at odds, that he's going through the rebellious teen phase and struggling to adapt and whatnot. And it's a little bit generic. I'd like to get a little deeper into that, but it's a fine setup. I buy into it. It makes sense to me. I would just like to see a little bit deeper into that. But she talks about how the last thing that she said to him was that he was stupid for not hiding. And she regrets that. So, I like the emotions of her monologue here. It's just delivered to the wrong person, in my opinion. But then Negan takes the opportunity to deliver more backstory. See, every scene's like backstory. It kind of is a bit exposition heavy, this episode. But again, that's, just talking about the pacing slowing down. But here, we're revealing what happened to Annie and his son Joshua, I think is, unless there's another Joshua, but I'm assuming it's his son, who his wife was pregnant in the final season of the original series. It's been a few years, so the son has been born. His name is Joshua. And he says that his wife got mugged, and I thought he was going to say that she died or something, but that would be weird to kill her off screen. So I'm glad that they didn't do that. But he tracked down her killers and then murdered them, even though he didn't really want to. I'm assuming that's why the marshal is after him, because of those murders. Maybe the marshal said that Negan murdered a marshal, so maybe these marshals mugged her for some reason. Or maybe she broke some kind of law, like curfew or something. I have a few questions here. Like, why didn't Negan end up in the Commonwealth? Or I might have to watch that final episode of the series again. But I'm not sure why Negan decided to take his wife and son to New Babylon. Why they didn't stay with the rest of the group? Maybe he got kind of kicked out. But it kind of felt like people learned to accept him towards the end. Especially with Ezekiel leading the charge against, saving him from the Commonwealth soldiers at the outpost, Outpost 22 or whatever it was. So I think I'm a little confused why he did that. Why go here? The Commonwealth's definitely a safer place. And then I'm also like, I get he wanted to get revenge. Why didn't he go after Anne and his son? Why did he stay in New Babylon? I get he wanted to get revenge. Maybe he was worried about bringing the marshals to them. I don't know why he didn't go after his wife and son. I don't understand it. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Maybe that's something they'll explain later, but it's just a little confusing. And also, I don't see why Maggie didn't ask that question. Like, why didn't you go after them? But I like that Negan, gave her a hat for Herschel. That's just a kind gesture from Negan. Now, Ginny is in the city, and, it's a coincidence she runs into somebody from the crew. But I guess there aren't that many groups in this island at that point, so maybe it's not that big a coincidence. But I just know New York City is huge, so... but then again, we weren't that far from the coast, when Maggie and Negan came in, so maybe it's not that much of a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking again. Probably. But we were back with this flashback scene, and Negan's frustrated with her, but then he kind of realizes he needs to take a different tack. He's trying to break through and say, you can't afford to do the coping thing in the apocalypse. It's too desperate. You got to do the survival thing. And he realizes that's not going to work, so he's like, okay, we're going to try to find this dinosaur together. So, I like this flashback scene. I like the Negan part of it. He's obviously carrying the scene because one character doesn't talk at all. Which is one of the reasons why, it's kind of hard to make that a character we really care about if we can't know anything they're thinking. Okay, so this is the person who happens to come by at the right time. Ginny gets surprised by a zombie. She kind of runs through a bunch of zombies. It just feels like she should have gotten grabbed at some point or something. Like, I don't know how good this girl is at fighting zombies. I mean, we've already talked about it on many of the Walking Dead episodes. Like, these kids, don't have the upper body strength or the height to really get at a zombie's head and break through. But, so it's a bit of a coincidence that she's able to just survive that by running away. Okay, fine. But then this random person comes by and, just happens to be from the group that we're with. So it's just coincidences coming together that kind of bother me. But Ginny drops the dinosaur thing that's the subject of the flashbacks, and then that lady picks it up, and then she follows her. Basically just an excuse to get her into the show again. So, again, if they pay it off later, it'll be fine. So here we're at a dinner scene with the crew, and there's this weird kind of way of saying grace, where they put objects that are important over their head and then down on the table. I get that I guess it's tying in with all the objects that Maggie is keeping with her. She even pulls out the drawing of Glenn at the end, almost as kind of an offering. So I don't know if this is like their ritual of just how they show respect to the past. I don't know. It doesn't really work for me. It just feels kind of weird. That it looks like they're about to say grace, but they don't say anything. Just this guy starts humming. So that it just felt weird. I don't know. It was off to me. I didn't really dig it. But they just do this kind of pan through everybody's face while he's humming. It just feels really awkward is what it is. Like, I don't know. Maybe this is a thing people do that I just haven't seen before. But then we're intercutting that with, it's like a funeral scene in a way with the Croat, except instead of mourning somebody, they celebrate them. So he's rallying up his people, kind of showing how he puts on a show like how Negan did, just gets the crowd excited. And I forgot to mention the title of this episode, People Are a Resource, and the Croat says it in his speech that's intercut with the dinner scene. I liked returning to that because that's a callback to something Negan used to say, but when he said it, he meant that living people can be useful. Like, everybody has value. But the Croat means it in the sense that they can all be turned into fuel. So, fueled by life, Negan is fueled by life, and the Croat's fueled by death. Interesting little motif there. I'm enjoying that. So, they're turning a zombie into fuel in front of it, and then they have this mask thing, and people are huffing out of it. So, he's got, like, drug-addicted people. I guess they're breathing in gasoline? I don't know. Is that really a drug that people take? Sounds like it's kind of deadly. Isn't breathing methane like not good? But I don't know. That's kind of cool. It's an interesting visual, and it's an interesting way to keep people in line. Just keep them hopped up. So Pearlie is dragged in, and he won't reveal anything. I don't know why he's so protective of his secrets. I don't know. I'm not really sure what he's trying to protect, but we get Pearlie in the arena in the middle, which is a cool look. And I will say it's a bit repetitive because we had the governor with his stadium and the fighting zombies to the death as entertainment. So we've had similar things before, but this scene, it's excellently staged and it has a good payoff and it's pretty cool. So this is the guy who was thrown off the balcony earlier, and this is the payoff for him getting fed the key. Basically, Pearlie manages to kill the zombie. But it kind of feels like, I'm surprised that the Croat would really want, like, he went through all the effort to feed the key to the guy and then kill him, specifically so that they could do this arena fighting scene, but he, like, chains him to the thing in the middle. So it really, most people would die in that situation. But I like how he gets behind him, he pops the head off, that's cool. People throw bottles because they wanted to see him die, and then he uses the bottle to gut the guy. I thought he was doing the guts trick for a second, and then I remembered the key, and then he pulls the key out and he gets himself out, and then he uses his shoe to kill some zombies. So I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool how the survival aspect of him not having any weapons on him, so he'll just use whatever he's got, and that's his shoot. So I fuck with that scene. I like the scene. It was cool. Again, I mentioned the repetition thing, but I'm willing to look past that. It's cool. And then we got a scene here with Tomasi, and there's kind of a brief bonding scene with him and Maggie, but I kind of just feel like that scene with Negan should have been with this other guy, so that we can get to know the crew a little bit better. And then we get another scene with Pearlie and the Croat, and the Croat, he kind of breaks him down, and Pearlie starts revealing, he only came with 2 marshals, the marshals are dead, and then the Croat somehow figured out that he's hiding something in his shoe, which, I don't know exactly how he figured that out, but the Croat looks in the shoe, it's the letter from his brother. It turns out it was his brother that we saw dead in the apartment last week. And I didn't notice it on first viewing, but on viewing the second episode again, they showed shots of like drugs in the apartment. They had the spoon and they had the powder drugs and stuff. And they just kind of panned past it. I missed it the first viewing, so I didn't mention it last week. But now we get a little bit deeper into that, another backstory thing, and this guy's talking about how his family cut him off. The Pearlie's brother, that is, was cut off by the rest of the family, and he was trying to get back in their life, and that's just like a guilt, sadness thing with Pearlie that he always regretted. I think that aspect kind of is some sort of payoff for last week. I kind of said last week that it felt like a dead-end storyline. I'm just curious where they're going with it. So, I'm curious about it. And also in this scene, I think the Croat talked about his own family getting killed by another family. It wasn't even by zombies, it was by another family. Unless he was referring to zombies and just made it sound like a different way. But it sounded like he was they were a meal for another family is what he said. And I think that is a decent backstory. And then he talks about meeting Negan. And then Pearlie, of course, reveals that Negan is on the island. That's the real reason why this character was captured by the Croat, is so that he can reveal that Negan is here. So I'm curious where that's going. And then we get one final scene with this guy who's been the antagonist. He wants Negan and Maggie gone because he found the wanted poster on Negan. I'm guessing he pickpocketed it somehow. They didn't really explain how he got it. Maybe if I rewatch the episodes again, I will find that point where he picks his pockets or something. But that'll be a really cool detail if they have that in there somewhere. But I like this. Negan kind of in his own hubris took it along with him, and it ends up being a plot element. It seems a bit convenient, but we know this character Negan, how egocentric he is, so he would take that thing with him, and it would get him into trouble. It just makes sense. So I like that, and we have a little scuffle here. And at this point, I'm kind of on the big guy's side. He's making sense. He's like, I got people to think about, and Negan says, I have people to think about. So the guy really he is making sense. If I found that wanted poster, I can't say I wouldn't do anything different in his situation. Negan's not really, if you know a lot about his backstory, he's not the most trustworthy guy. So I can totally understand why he would do that. But Negan ends up taking him out. And I gotta wonder what Negan's motivations are behind that. He kind of feels some guilt about killing Glenn, maybe, and he really wants to do this for Maggie. So I'm curious to delve into why Negan went to a route this drastic. Why not just go? But I guess he doesn't want the secret to get out. But Negan kills this guy. What if this guy already told the others about the wanted poster? Like, that wouldn't necessarily solve his problem. In fact, it would make it worse, especially if they find his body, which, it's like, what does Negan do after this? Does he bury the body? Does he hide it somewhere? I'm really curious to see where they go with that. But if they just pick up next week and it's never mentioned again, they're going to go looking for their guy, right? They're going to try to find him. So we'll see next week what goes on with that. But it just kind of felt like a heat of the moment thing with Negan. But yeah, they have a little scuffle, and I was like, oh, Negan's about to get his ass whooped, dude. There is no way. This guy is huge. He could definitely take down some Negan. but that's not what happened. Negan used kind of a cheese grater thing on his forehead and then kicked him back, and there are these gas things that hook up to various like ovens and whatnot. So he falls on that and just so happens to wound him, and then Negan finishes him off. Brutal scene. I love seeing more Negan come back and doing brutal stuff. So I'm with it, man. I'm with it. I like this scene. It was pretty exciting. So here we got Maggie coming outside, and the lady who came back with the dinosaur gave it to Maggie because Maggie's like, oh, I know a girl who would like that, and I think she recognizes that it is, in fact, Ginny's. And she's burning it here, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe she's afraid Negan would recognize it and then get distracted from her task and then try to find Ginny, because she knows by seeing that Ginny is out there somewhere. So Maggie's deciding to burn it. My first viewing, I was like, why is she doing that? I'm really confused why she's burning it, but now that I'm talking through it, it makes perfect sense. She's kind of lying by omission to Negan in a way. She knows that Ginny is nearby somewhere, and Ginny just so happens to be watching from the car. So I like that Maggie's doing something shady to hide from Negan. That makes sense to me. This is where they kind of set up that Negan has a whistle communication thing. It's like a compromise. He's like, okay, you don't have to talk, but here's a whistle you can do. And then she does it, and that's kind of a bonding moment for them. And I like that scene, and there's a nice payoff. And he has the whistle from his wife Lucille, so bringing that back to the Here's Negan episode. And then we have Negan fixing the dinosaur doll by putting a bandage on it. So I like that, and we can definitely tell that that's the exact same dinosaur. There's no way it would be mistaken for anything. Negan would definitely recognize that. So I think it makes more sense to me now why Maggie would burn it. So that's where we're at with this episode. Again, slower episode, but enjoyable, and there's some really intriguing things going on. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you're enjoying these reviews, please hit subscribe, and I would love to see you in future reviews. Be sure to stick around this weekend. We got The Witcher Season 3 dropping, the first half of it, so I'm going to be reviewing those over the weekend, and I hope to see you guys there. But if not, we'll see you next week for the next episode of Dead City. With that, it's been your boy Shuggy. See you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.